Right, welcome to a video and thanks for joining this live stream. Gotta make sure a few things are just working as expected. So if you are joining this session, of course, please feel free to let me know in the chat section here, and I need to actually put that up so that I can see it. All right, now if you can hear me, of course, please just let me know in the chat section. That way I can actually know that I'm getting through to you all. One of the things I say is, if you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks for joining again. This is something I try to do every week, at least once a week, where I get to engage with you all that have subscribed to this channel, and those of you who have maybe found value in some of my videos that I've made on this channel for the past couple of, I guess, years. One of the reasons why I do this is because I believe in getting your questions answered. A lot of times I get comments, and I'll be honest, it just takes a lot of time to respond to comments, and I appreciate them, and I would go and check occasionally to catch up on those comments. But it does take some time, so I apologize if I haven't responded to your comments. If there's something that has been pressing on your mind that you have and you want to ask me, of course, this is always the session to ask. All right, this live stream is a way for me to catch up on some of those comments and answer your questions to the best of my abilities. Of course, if I do not know an answer to the question, I'll let you know, and maybe I'll point you in the right direction and give you some guidance to the best of my knowledge as well. Of course, please actually let me pull this up right here. One of the things I say is don't forget to like, share, subscribe. It goes a long way. That's the way I can get to reach out to other people who may be looking for information like that I share on this channel. One of the things I start with is this, all right? If you're somebody who is looking for aviation, guidance, or you're looking for help in navigating this world of aviation, I think one of the things I say is feel free to reach out to people that you can trust, people that you can share your concerns with, people that can listen to you or maybe give you the guidance that you need. One of the issues that I experienced, and for those of you who have followed this channel for some time, okay, is that a lot of times you have question, but you don't get a response to your questions, maybe because the person you've reached out to is busy or whatever. And you might always go on Google to find answers to your questions, but the truth is that you also don't know how relevant the answers to those questions are. So all that to say, this is always an opportunity to get those questions answered, whether from me, whether from somebody that I know. I do have a lot of people who are in the aviation industry, different airlines in different parts of the world, and sometimes just being able to pull that information from those who, even though I may not have a first-hand experience of that, of getting that question answered, I may be able to get information from them to help you. All right, all of that to say, the goal is to help and support your journey as well. Now, if you're thinking of, let me pull something up real quick here. You're thinking of becoming a pilot, right? One of the things that I always say is, there's so many resources out there. There's so many resources out there, whether it's from the flight school you plan to apply to, or you're training under, or if it's through just your own digging online, looking for answers or looking for resources. Be very mindful of the relevancy and of course the the importance of getting your information from the right sources. Okay, one of the things I always say is, I don't know everything. And that means that I'm human, right? So for that reason, if there's something that you ask that I don't have an answer to, just understand that, again, my goal is to share as much as I can to help with whatever you're trying to achieve. All right. So one of the things I want to start with is, what kind of programs are you interested in? If you have questions, leave it in the chat section. This is really the time for you to get those questions answered. Right now, as we speak, there are some programs that are open. Okay. I can think about the first one in my mind now. And the reason why I try to do this is, you know, you can get to, let me see this one here. I'm going to share my screen now. Window. Here. All right, for those of you who qualify for this one, actually I need to still move it a little bit more. Let me swap this back around. Looks a little bit too, and let's do that. Okay, that's better. This is the Singapore Airlines Cadet program. This one is currently open as well. Now, one thing I always say is make sure you always read the requirements so that you don't waste your time, right? And this is a question I get asked almost every time. You know, I'm from India. Should I be applying to this? Can I apply to this program? It says it right here. You know, SIA is recruiting ab initio cadet pilots in Singapore. To apply, you need to meet the following requirements, and I kind of list all these requirements here. Let's see. Try something here. Think to ask. Okay, let's see. I think I already answered this question because I get asked this all the time. People would ask, you know, hey Gigi, just so that I get your question answered here, was wondering whether I can apply for Aer Lingus program without having a visa right now, because I'm having IELTS with good mark and can apply for visa if needed. That's why. Oh, so one thing I know about the UK programs is that you generally have to be a permanent resident of the UK and or be a citizen, either one, right? And with that, you do not, I don't think you can apply to Aer Lingus, you know, if you have to get a visa. That's one of the things that you need to keep in mind. Now, depending on what country you're from, you have to understand that some countries may have some ties with the UK, and you might be able to work. As long as you can work without relying on Aer Lingus providing you some clearance or some documents to be able to work, then you may be able to apply. But generally speaking, and this is me generalizing here, generally speaking, you cannot wait on them to provide you with the documents to the embassy in order for you to apply to the Cadet program so that you can go train. They don't do that. You have to be a resident of the UK in order to be able to apply. I hope that makes sense. Actually, sorry, I have the wrong thing up here. Let me see. Let me do that. Bear with me here. Okay, that's that, and then let me come back here. Okay. All right. All right, so these are the requirements for the Singapore program. All right, the Singapore ab initio Cadet pilot program. I don't really have more to say. I've covered this in my other videos. So if you're interested in this particular program, I would say check out the video that I've made. But this one is open, and it's only, I believe, you have to be a Singaporean to apply. So I'm not going to waste time on this one. Another program that I know that is currently open is let me see. All right, this one here. I've covered this as well. I've made a video about it. If you haven't seen it, okay. Although this requires that you have to be from the region. Let's see, learn more about eligibility. Air France and Transavia pilots carry out, okay, blah blah blah. Pilots are divided into categories. To apply, visit our recommend page. And this is in French, so it has to be translated into English. Sometimes the translation doesn't really match up right. But see. Okay, description of applying. From what I've gotten from this in the past, for those who have applied to this, I believe you have to be French to apply to this program. And of course, a lot of their requirements, for example, your CV has to be in French, your cover letter has to be in French, your diploma, testing, let's see, baccalaureate, theoretical, ATPL. If applicable, your French government scholarship certificate, okay, and a clean criminal record. Yeah, but this is all I believe this all requires that you are a French citizen. I believe so. I'm not sure, but I believe most of the people that have qualified for these programs are generally from that region. And here, the other one that I think, let me see. There is of course, there's some UK programs as well that are currently open. Actually, not open. They're going through the process right now. We have the British Airways Cadet program, or pilot, the SPA. We have the Jet 2 as well. That is another one. To Cadet program. Let me see. Yeah, this is not open at this time anyway, but it recently came up. I think this is their first one, if I remember correctly. Key dates. Application window was from May 13th to June 3rd. Online assessments, Monday 9 June to Friday 11 July. So they're doing this one here and interviews. Okay. Yeah, make sure somebody mentioned BIA and SIA, their programs as well. Singapore Airlines and BIA. Decent. VA Indian Cadet program. One thing I don't know about the program though, is it fully sponsored or is it partially sponsored? I'm not sure. Yeah, British Airways is definitely open as well, but that is coming to an end shortly, or at least soon, because they are going through the final stage right now. So I doubt if that is. Let me pull up the chat here, because so that I keep missing the messages. Let me minimize that. All right, financing opportunities for 100% of the course. Let me it's interesting. Let's see. Gotta pay for the entry exam. 2 years. Indians will never. That is I've never really, I don't know much about this program, I'll be honest about that. So it's worth looking into for those who may qualify, of course. And it says 100% financing opportunities for 100% of the course. I guess it doesn't really say if it's going to be covered by the airline or it's just you that, you know, maybe it's going to be, maybe you have to figure out the financing or raise the funds. I can't tell. Let's see, FIFA, it says, sorry bro, the British Airways or Singapore Airlines get a program. I want it fully sponsored. Oh, yeah. So the thing is that in order, where are you from to start with? ARS, FIFA, okay? Because you need to qualify for, you need to be able to legally reside in those countries to apply. So for example, if you're not a British citizen or you don't have the ability to work and live in the UK, you can't qualify for it. Sorry, you know, it's just as direct as that. Same thing with Singapore Airlines. Singapore Airlines only hire Singaporeans, from what I've gathered. Maybe the Indians, I don't know. Okay, but from what I've seen and from the feedback I've been given, it's usually a lot of Singaporeans, people who live in that region. That okay, so you're from India, so unfortunately, unless you can reside in UK, you can apply to the UK programs, or at least that I know for sure. Okay, you have to have the right to live and work in the UK in order to be able to apply to the BA Speedway program or the other ones, Aer Lingus and the likes, TUI and the likes. Let's see, YZAA, I'm from Bangladesh. Is there any fully funded program suitable for me as per your knowledge? Right now, unfortunately, I do not know of any program that you qualify for from Bangladesh. Okay, yeah, I get questions like that from different people as well from that region, asking if there's any program that they qualify for that I would recommend. Most of these programs, one thing I'll say is most of these programs require that you live in those regions, and unfortunately, actually, let me say something here. Yeah, LOCSEC Cadet program. Is it open now though? I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a program that I often talk about, you know, here and there, but I don't think it is open right now. Let me see. Sometimes I feel like I need another screen because I want to move this one out of the way without losing what I'm trying to do in the background. Oh gosh, this is funny. All right, let me do that and just put this right here. Wizz Air. I'll find a Cadet program. I'm trying to avoid it. Keeps. All right, let's see. Hey, Pavia, jumped into your live to say thank you for the motivation. You're welcome. Thanks for joining the live. Back then, you helped me with some videos for Wizz Air, LOCSEC program. How did it go? I never got an interview, but I decided to follow the dream. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Sorry it didn't work out. Now, Pavia, oh, I'm sorry, Francisco. Let me just call you Francisco. If you have why do you know why you didn't get an interview? I'm curious. Do you know why you didn't get an interview? Was it your CV? Was it the fact that you didn't have the qualification? Any ideas at all? I can work and reside in the UK and on the website of Singapore. Correct. For FIFA, so that is the thing. If you can work and reside in the UK, okay, without needing any sponsorship, that is a key thing. Okay, if you can work and reside in the UK without needing sponsorship, then you can apply to the British Airways program or the TUI and the likes. But if you need any sponsorship from them, that means they have to write you a letter, or they have to show that, you know, the reason why they want to hire you or whatever. That is needing sponsorship. Okay, and that would not work. You have to not need any sponsorship. So if you say that you can work and reside in the UK, then you should apply as long as you don't need sponsorships. Does that make sense? I hope this makes sense. Okay. Let's see. Pava, I never got an interview but decided to follow the dream. Okay, I think I tell us something about training bonds in the various cadet programs you know about and some of the most absurd extreme terms you've ever heard of. Oh, well. So generally speaking, Julius, Mirage, most of the bonds that I see, they all are around the same timeline. Most of them are around between anywhere from 5 years to 7 years is what I've seen. I've never really seen anything more than 7 years. I think it makes sense because the shorter the bond or the duration of the bond, the more money they will take from your paycheck, if that makes sense. Because the goal is that some of these programs, you are having to pay it back in some way, or, you know, especially for the sponsored ones where they would sponsor you, and then once you start working, they start taking some of their money back indirectly. Sometimes they will actually give you a rate at which they would, you know, the rate they would charge, or take back the money, all right, that they offered to you for training, while some may just put you on a reduced pay. Okay, so that means that instead of if you're a direct entry pilot, you might be making, I don't know, just random numbers here, 50,000 euros or maybe 70,000 euros, right, depending on the airline. But because they've sponsored you and you came through the cadet program, they might only be paying you 40,000 or 45,000 euros for, let's say, 4 years, because they're indirectly taking back some of the money that they spent on your training. So I've never really seen anything absurd. What I've just seen is, you know, 5 years, from 5 years to 7 years, what I've seen generally. And if you leave the airline before those timelines, or, you know, those bond duration is up, then you are required to pay them back, you know, a pro rata share. So that means a prorated share of the amount you hold. So if you've only spent 3 years, then, well, they'll calculate how much you've paid back in 3 years. And of course, if your bond is, let's say, 2 years to go, then you have to pay the difference, you know. Let's see. Francisco, I'm currently 7 Air Flight Academy student with 10 of 1380 PL theory done, and I'm already did my solo. Oh well, that means you're making progress. You know, you did your solo. You're making good progress. Then I'm on this, by the way. Just I pinned that so that I can actually pull it up. The reason was age. I'm 33 years old and decided for younger candidates. That makes sense. Now, I don't know why some airlines still kind of, I don't want to say discriminate, but it's a form of discrimination by saying, you know, a certain age. Now, don't get me wrong, there's always some requirements. Some airlines will say if you're over 55 years old, you can apply, but 33 isn't any outrageous or absurd age to pursue this. You know, I still consider 33 being quite young, you know. Do you offer any courses to prepare students for cadet programs? It depends on the program. Not all programs. Some programs, I'm not too familiar with some of the programs out there. The ones that I really know about are the ones that I talk about generally. But one thing I want to say is that I do offer the one-on-ones for like people who are preparing for interviews. Interviews in general are, you know, for any airline do have a certain structure to them. And if you understand the structure of answering certain interview questions, that can help you ace the interview. So that's really what I do. Well, not full-time. I work full-time as a pilot, but you know, through YouTube and all that, I sometimes will provide this one-on-one service for people who are preparing for interview. There was once a mention of a self-sponsored cadet program. What would be or where the glaring differences when compared to sponsored cadet programs? So the thing about the sponsored programs, okay, let me pull up an example. Actually, this one here, I mean, this is a cadet program, right? By the way, this is India, but the system is somewhat similar in different parts of the world, where it's a cadet program. You sign up, you go through the assessment process. Once you get selected, then you have to pay a fee, right? So for example, this one, the fee is, I believe this is Indian rupees, right? So but let's see, 31,500 US dollars. Let's see, I'm trying to see the breakdown of everything. It doesn't really, I guess this is the total amount in rupees, but yeah, I can't tell how much it is in dollars. I'll have to do the conversion. But the point here is, for this particular program, for example, you have to show that you can fund this amount of money and of course get through all the assessments, pass them, do the interviews and all that stuff. The difference would be with a sponsored, because this is a sponsored, well, not sponsored by the airline, self-sponsored. Okay, this is a self-sponsored program, and if you self-sponsor, the guarantee, or what they guarantee you to an extent, okay, no airline will promise that they will hire you, because it all depends on your performance during training and the results and all the stuff that you do along the way. Okay, that will determine they'll hire you. But the promise at the end of it is that if you get all your ratings and you complete training in good time and you have good behavior, good results and all that stuff, they will hire you. So you're spending all this money with some form of assurance that you'll be hired at the end of your training. Okay. On the other hand, let's assume that this was and by the way, once you get your training, this is in relation to the previous question I answered. Once you finish your training and you start working, you don't owe any money to the airline. So that means that if after a year or 2 years you decide that you want to switch airlines, since you're self-sponsored, you don't owe the airline anything for most part. Now, some airlines may still have bonds, just so you know, because let's say you do a type rating and they paid for the type rating, because all of this does not include your type rating. Okay. So maybe it's a 737 or 787. Actually, this includes type rating, by the way. It's right there. Type rating 8320. Okay. So yikes. I guess you're paying for it. So most airlines may not have that. Okay. So because of the fact, so since you're paying for it, you technically can walk away at the end of, you know, you've worked for the airline for a year. There's no bond. That's the point. On the other hand, there's some airlines that may have a bond because they've paid for your type rating and they require that you stay for 2 years, although they didn't pay for your training. And of course, if the other variation to this would be fully sponsored programs that the airline actually paid for your training. The difference is, well, your bond is generally longer, so you have to stay with the airline for, let's say, 5 years or 7 years. That is often the difference. I hope this is making sense. Okay. So the self-sponsored programs just gives you a bit more flexibility. Okay. In the sense you're not stuck with a particular airline. You can easily maybe leave that airline after a few years. I'm talking about maybe a year or two, depending on what contract you signed with the airline. Okay. Let's see. Is it true that Indigo only takes cadets who have aviation background? There is a level of truth to that. All right, there's most airlines, okay, most airlines generally want to save on training, okay, even though you're paying for this one, but they prefer, generally speaking, they prefer that you have some experience, whether it's even some discovery flights done, because it shows interest, it shows that you're motivated about it. So I wouldn't say that they only take experienced, or I would say people with aviation background. I don't think that won't always be the case, okay, but majority of the time airlines would lean towards people with some experience, even if it's just the discovery flight you've done or some few hours you've acquired. It goes a long way in showing that you're motivated and stuff. And somebody answered, said no. All right, so yeah, that is correct. They don't, I like I said, I don't think they will only take people with aviation background, but when it comes down to showing that you are motivated, you have interest and all that stuff, having some aviation background can strengthen your position, especially during interviews. Okay, let's see, as an experienced pilot in the industry, is there any practice where airline hold back on upgrading pay packages of pilots who start as cadets? You know, that is possible. That is possible. Now, again, it all depends on the region. It depends on the level of transparency that the airline offer to its employees, right? But yes, for example, a good one from the top of my mind right now is the British Airways Speedbird pilot program. And I remember correctly that if you start with the airline as a cadet pilot, I think you're paid about £40,000 or 40 something thousand pounds. For there's some slight increases, okay, for a few years, but you're paid. Your pay is definitely lower than what a direct entry pilot is getting. Okay, but again, they've paid for your training, so I think it's fair, right? But to intentionally, like you said, it says practice where they hold on upgrading pay package. I haven't seen that. I don't know personally. Okay, but I wouldn't be surprised, if that makes sense, that some airlines may do stuff like that. Hi Logan, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Hope you're doing well as well. So here's something that I would like to do, and I know that there's a program that I need to install to do that, but I also know that I don't I did it the last time, where I can actually pull up the chart. Okay, here's the thing. Let me see. They had so that I can actually pull up the chart on the web browser. Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out something here. I see. Not that one. Guess the next thing is I need to figure out, I need to change some of the settings, filters. Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to bring up, just so that I can bring up the chat itself. But I don't know if it's helping or it's more of a distraction. All right, let's see. You know, like how in the corporate world they give small pay upgrades to internal candidates versus external hires. That is not common, Julius. I don't think it's something that I see, at least that I've seen. Now, again, it depends on the on the region. All right, every region has its own way of operating, and I've heard stories from different parts of region, like, you know, in Africa or just some places that I feel like they do some shady stuff. Why is it transparent? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Do commercial pilots have lobby groups where they can raise concerns on the quality of build of airplanes they fly? Usually it's the airline that can go to. You can raise those concerns with the airline, but you also have to remember that these airlines are, or the airplanes are certified by the governing body. So for example, FAA, or in France, right, with Airbus, for example, okay, and they're often regulated strictly. So the point is, if those authorities approve or certify those airplanes, then you can't, as a pilot and you're trained to fly it, you can't really go back and say, oh, unless something comes up, right? Unless something comes up, then you can't really go out and say that you want to raise concerns about the quality of the plane you fly, if that makes sense, because it's been approved, it's been certified, and you've been trained to fly it. So you kind of have to deal with it, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to see. There's another program that I wanted to bring up as well. It's not British Airways. Can't tell if this is actually open right now. I'm trying to find more information on it, but this document here, I don't think is a recent one. This is just a first officer position. Candidate profile and open positions right now. They have first officer 737, seasonal, permanent, pilot cadet program right there. And I guess it's open now. And this one requires that you are, let's see, full-time, 20 months training. Okay, so the Luxair cadet program pre-finances the training for aspiring pilots, covering both theory and flight instruction. Graduates transition directly to cockpit as Luxair pilots, launching their aviation careers. Requirements: be at least 18 years old, have or will have successfully graduated from high school, have the unrestricted right to live and work in the EU. Okay, so that's this one here. This is always what gets a lot of people. So if you have the right to, unrestricted right to live and work in the EU, then of course this is another program you can apply for. And by the way, this is a program that I've covered, I believe, 2 years in a row. I remember one of the programs, the first one in particular, there was a guy that saw my video, applied, and luckily for him, he got called for the interview, you know, and he aced it. He's actually in training now. I think he should be finishing either late this year or early next year. Do commercial pilots have, okay, I believe some manufacturers was given the green light to self-regulate and things started going south. No, they don't self-regulate per se. This if, for example, I'm guessing you're talking about Boeing, but they don't self-regulate. The oversight was just not, I guess, again, in words of media, right? Not me, because I'm not there. There was just a bit of a lack of oversight in some of the necessary steps that needs to be taken in quality control. Okay, so yeah, but they don't have they don't have the ability to self-regulate and approve their own airplanes. That's going to be catastrophic. Hi Stephen, would you recommend starting a PPL on the basics of being able to afford it on monthly income, or would you recommend putting all the costs to one side before starting training? One thing I would say is, for this particular question, it depends on the situation. Let me pin it first. It depends on the situation that you have going on. If you have the ability to fund it on a pay-as-you-go type structure and you can work, I would say take that approach. Now, the problem with that though is, depending on how much you're making, okay, you might experience situations where you only fly, let's say, twice a month or 3 times a month, okay? And the problem with that approach is you end up spending a lot of money in the long run. And the reason is just because of recency. One of the basic ways to learn something is frequency, right? Frequency of practice. The more you practice something, the quicker you're likely to learn and improve. So if for any reason you are in a situation where you're only flying, let's say, once in 10 days, and throughout the month you're only flying 3 times, for example, that I believe will slow you down in the long run. Now, there's some caveats to that. One of those caveats would be, maybe you're the type of person who has the ability to learn quickly, or you're the type of person who can stay very consistent with chair flying, right? Or you're somebody who is able to, for example, use flight simulator to keep that practice in. Okay, especially at the beginning of flight training, it is best that you have a lump sum of money and put that money down and train as frequently as possible, so that you can learn the basic things, get into the habit of flying, and then wrap it up, okay, at a very good point. And a good point of wrapping up your training as an initial ab initio would be to at least get your private, right? Get a private pilot license done. Then you can slowly maybe get into the other stages, whether it's instrument, whether it's commercial. You can then maybe slow down a little bit, but not much, because again, you're learning new airplanes. Some of the things you're doing will be different. So long story short, okay, it depends on you. If you feel like you have the ability to fly more frequently and still pay as you go, then I'll say do that, because you're not having to wait, maybe a year or 2 years to save up the money. But if you are not able to fly as frequently as possible, then the ideal target, just so you know, the ideal target is to fly at least, at minimum, twice a week. And that is at least, okay, at minimum twice a week. Once you start flying once a week, especially on that private stage, it's very, very it can be inadequate, and that will mean that you end up spending more money in the long run because you're repeating a lot of stuff. Okay, let's see. Hey boss, I'm planning on applying to Speedway next year. What do you recommend that I should do to prepare? Hey PT P_T, but I guess it's PT. One of the things I would say is with Speedbird, I think there's just a lot of information and resources out there that can help you in preparing. One of the things I would say is, of course, I would recommend that you start using PASS, pilotassessments.com. I believe They offer, you know, some decent, very good programs on different airlines. But let me, and of course you have the different courses you can sign up for, the basic, advanced, professional, and professional plus. And of course, if you come in here and you put in BA, you have the Speedway Pilot Academy here. And which was actually updated. I guess most of them were updated yesterday, 2 days ago actually. But anyway, yeah, that is something that you can definitely use in practicing. And if you check, maybe in the description of this video, there should be like a discount code, Steven Aviate. You get like €5 off or something like that. Saves you something, not much. But the important thing is practicing, right? Now, the other thing I also recommend is, you know, they always change stuff around. Understand that there's always going to be some new stuff. But if you watch my videos on that speed, but I feel like I've covered it extensively on, you know, whether it was 2023, 2024, and now, you see a lot of resources, whether it's things to keep in mind when preparing for your assessments and how to make sure that you can ace the assessment, at least through, you know, practice, repetition, and of course things like, you know, the first stages. That's where a lot of people drop off, right? How do you make sure that you get through those stages? A lot of it is practice. Working on your math is so important, and you know, math is something that, again, if you don't practice it regularly, you are likely to struggle through that type of intense and time crunched exercise. So again, practicing will definitely do you a lot of good. Okay, I actually didn't know that this is open now, this Wizz Air program. But I also noticed that not a lot of people show interest in this particular program, you know. Let's see, Mirage, do you see yourself flying a Comac in years to come? Probably not. Probably not. I don't see how, but just because, you know, I don't think the airlines in the US, for example, where I am, are going to really adopt Comac in general. So I don't see it happening. Well, they look nice though. They look nice, no doubt about it. Air Baltic. Interesting stuff. Close that, close that. What's happening in aviation today? Sometimes this is how I get some of the information that I get as well, just to catch up on news here and there, see what's developing, what applies, all right? Try to share some of that information with, actually. Sierra Speed Leaders discuss complex supply chain challenges. Use renewable fuel standard, Nothing interests me at this time. FAA shifts foreign procedure oversights to operators. So this is, I guess this is what you were talking about actually. The FAA has transferred the responsibility of reviewing foreign instrument procedures to operators. No, this is not for manufacturing of airplanes. This is more about instrument procedures to operators with guidelines in a new advisory cycle and as outlined in this notice. FAA will remove foreign procedures and airports from OPSPECs, MSPEC, LOA templates. Okay, going forward, operators must evaluate procedures themselves. That's interesting. Procedures themselves in accordance with Advisory Circular AC 120, which provides guidance for assessing foreign terminal instrument procedures. That's interesting. So to kind of make this, for those of you who will not understand, okay, in order to get to any airport or fly into any airport under IMC, instrument meteorological conditions, or when visibility is low, or when there are clouds, that's one of the ways you need an instrument approach. That instrument approach will guide you to the runway. Now, depending on the type of instrument approach, okay, that you are flying, it needs to be designed by some it needs to be designed and approved to make sure that necessary safety measures are taken. It can get complicated, but in basic terms, make sure that an airplane, an airline, different airplanes that fly into that airport, depending on the category, you have A through E, right, category of airplanes, can safely operate and shoot an approach into that runway. So they have to meet certain criteria, whether obstacle clearance requirements, terrain requirements, all that stuff, right? And this is just something that I find interesting now, because the FAA has transferred responsibility for reviewing foreign instrument procedures, okay, to operators with guidelines in a new advisory circular, which generally speaking, I believe, depending on the approach plate that is used, and I need to verify this, you have back in the, well, not even back in the days, recently, Jepson is one of the what do you call it, they designed all these approach plates that most airlines use worldwide. Jepson is one of them anyway, and I'm surprised that the FAA actually did that. I didn't know that actually. Operators should expect a call from their inspectors to reissue relevant op specs, M specs, Interesting. All right, foreign terminal instrument procedures. Okay, that's what that is. Where is it again? Well, that's interesting. Doesn't really affect me now, because most operators, right, most airlines in general, they actually have their own well-established airlines. They end up having their own approaches designed for the type of airplane they fly. So unless you're somebody who is an independent operator, or like a charter or private type operator, that's when something like this would really affect you. But if you work under like an airline, most of these airlines generally have it designed for them, and changes like this doesn't really affect them. I see. Hi Stephen, I applied to Wizz Air Pilot Academy. I'm really excited for the upcoming test. Well done, and best of luck to you. Flight with Geo. I think there was a time you joined the live. I remember saying that name anyway. When is your assessment? And anyway, wish you success. That's the most important thing. Hope you're practicing. One of the questions I have I'm thinking now, in order to apply to Wizz Air, that's actually another one that is open, or I believe it's open year round. This one, let's see, you have the She Can Fly Wizz Air Pilot Academy, but this is not a fully sponsored program. You have to get approved, that I know. Thanks to the improved financial scheme, okay, which I think I've covered this in a previous video. One of the things that it mentioned is, if I go all the way to the bottom, because I've seen this in the past, finances. Okay, here it tells you how much it costs. The cost of aviation training is 61,460 euros. Out of this training fee, you will have to pay 13,950 initially before getting enrolled to the program. This part of the fee covers the first phase of the training program for approximately 5 months, including part of the ATPL theory and around 20 hours of flight training. And then the remainder of the training fee is paid in monthly installments for 5 years after being released as first officer at Wizz Air. So between months 1 through 30 after flight check for release, you pay 520 euros per monthly. Okay, I was like, that doesn't make sense, but yes, monthly. And then of course between 31 and 60 you paid 97. And this is something that I like about this program, in the way that it's structured. Most people do not have the ability to save up money for training because it's going to take so long, and most people do not have the the assets to get a loan. Okay, so with a program like this and a financial scheme or repayment scheme like this one, it makes it bearable. Yes, don't get me wrong, you actually, how much, here's a question, I don't know if you know this, fly with Geo, by the way, sorry if I mess up your name, but how much does Wizz Air pay its pilots? Do you know? If you know, just put in the chat, I would appreciate it. Let me see if I can actually find that information. Okay, this is more like a range, but let me find first officer pay. Let's see, Wizz Air pilot. I don't know how true this is though. It seems like Wizz Air first officer salaries. It says here average Wizz Air first officer yearly pay in UK is approximately £29,984. I'm not sure. That seems quite low, in my opinion. Let me see. Around 3K per month at start, I think. The thing is, you can upgrade to cab really quickly, something like 5 years, $1,500. Yeah, that's correct. Wizz also get paid by the kilometer. Really? Santos, thanks for sharing that. I've never heard that before. Really? It depends on the schedule, kilometer flown. Wow, base, etc. That's interesting, because what I see here, let me show you what I also found here, which might not be correct, of course. This says, but this is all AI generated, and that's why I don't sometimes trust it. It says Wizz Air pilots first officers can expect to earn annual salary ranging from this amount to that amount, and in euros it will be slightly less, I believe, but that's still way higher than what I'm seeing here, because 3K per month is 36,000 if I go with what Flight Joe is saying. All right, 36,000 per year, right? That's probably off. Yeah, that AI is so off. I agree. Even when I saw it, I knew that it can't be that high, because I've never really, even though I've never really looked into a pay, but this sounds, oops, verifying, turn home. Let me go back. This sounds more accurate. Why is it doing that? I think I clicked that incorrectly. Yeah, this sounds more accurate, you know, but also it's kind of low in my opinion. All right, considering let's assume that you go through this Cadet program, right, and you're getting paid, let's say 36,000. All right, let's just say 36,000. Between 30 months 1 and 30, you're paying, okay, so you're paying, let's say 3,000 per month. They're taking away this amount for the first 30 months, and then this amount for the next 60 months. My guess is your pay would also increase, right? So hopefully you can upgrade sooner and start making, you know, good money as a captain. Loyalty bonus. So the last 5 installments amounting to 5,000 euros or the fees will be waived if you comply with the terms of the agreement, especially if you maintain your employment at Wizz Air for 5 years. So if you don't leave, they know how to get you, right? And I think that's the duration of the. It's not a bond. Well, I guess it's a bond, right? Because you have to pay back what you owe. Otherwise, you'd have to pay everything back. Let's see. The cost of advanced training is 40,000 euros. Let's see. The first installment is that. Loyalty period is 5 years. Okay, yeah, it's 5 years. And somebody was asking earlier that have I seen any outrageous bond durations? I've seen 7. I think 6 years. What's the other airline? Wizz Air. I think Wizz Air is 6 years, if I remember correctly. This is 5 years. I've seen 7 years. You know, so it all varies. Cool. That was interesting. Let's see. Hi Steven, I will graduate next year and I really want to apply for a flight school, but I don't have money for 8. What do you recommend? You know, this question, right? This is what a lot of people experience, and I appreciate you asking that question, you know, because my recommendation to you is, when you say you're going to graduate, what are you graduating college or are you graduating high school? That's one thing. The reason why I'm asking that question is, if you're graduating college, for example, or university, maybe you can get a job and start making some money, right? That would help. And I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but let's break it down to things under your control. All right, the first thing under your control is, if you can get a job and start making money, maybe you can start saving money towards it. That's one thing you can do. Now, one thing you have to understand is, none of these programs that I cover, right, there are no guarantees in them taking you on. You might be exceptional, but if for any reason something goes wrong on the interview or the assessment, that's it. Now you have to wait maybe a year again to reapply. So what I'm trying to say is, they are not fully in your control. Your ability to get selected or not get selected is not really up to you. Yes, you have some control in, you know, preparing, making sure you're ready, doing all the work that you need to do in order to succeed, but there are no guarantees, right? So that's one thing to understand. So one thing I always say is, what is under your control? What is under your control is, maybe you can save money, maybe you can work, you can also, right, try to make extra money and put it to the side to save. The other thing under your control might be loans, right? If you have the ability to do so, a combination of this might work. Maybe saving some money and then taking on a loan. That might be a combination approach you take, or combined approach you take. But outside of those, then we can get into things like, you know, joining the military. Have you thought about that? I know that's not something you probably want to hear, but if you're, you know, really passionate about flying, maybe joining the military might be an option for you, depending on where you're from, depending on what goes on around in that region. Hopefully you're not going to any war anytime soon, you know, but I'm just trying to list options out for you here. And again, this is a personal thing that you have to decide what's best for you. But the next thing would then be scholarship programs. All right, I talk about some scholarship programs on this channel, but again, this is generally unique to regions. So you have to be from a specific region to apply for the scholarship, and they have all these requirements, and that is not fully under our control or under your control. But it's an option that you should consider depending on the region you're from. Maybe looking into organizations, aviation organizations around you, reaching out to people in those organizations, networking, those are ways you can get information to know what is open, what is coming up, what they're trying to achieve. Those might be things you can do. But the other thing also is the cadet programs that I know that's why you've asked this question. What can you do? Well, do you have any cadet programs you can apply to? And that's where we can then get into preparation, studying, taking all the necessary practice that you need to do in order to succeed. But if money is the issue, if those other options are not there for you, and money is really the issue that we have to then rely on to solve this problem, then we need to find money, right? That's really what we need to do. And finding money means getting a job, working, saving, and putting that money towards training. And I wish I had a better answer for you, because again, this is the same problem that I had. I didn't have all the money when I started training. There were times I ran out of money. There were times I couldn't fly because I didn't have money. Okay, so you have to understand that your problem is not unique to you. This money issue, like a lot of people have it. So what we can do is what we can control. Okay, and that means that maybe get a job, start working, right? Maybe save money, maybe get a loan, and of course the opportunities starts to diminish as you go outside of those options, because those are the things that are within your control. The rest are things that are outside of our control, which would then be like joining the military, applying to cadet programs and scholarship programs and the likes. Okay. Hey Steven, good evening from India. I'm about to finish my high school, but I'm confused. I should move to US for my flight training, or should I go to the Air India Cadet? So hey brown high guy, that's interesting. Well, what I would say is this, right? It depends on what you want to achieve. It depends on where you want to be. And I can relate to your thought process. I truly understand where you're coming from, because I didn't grow up in the United States as well. I moved over here for training, went on more schooling and all that stuff, right? So the question I think you should ask yourself is, one, if you have the ability to train in the US, okay, it's a different experience entirely. Now, if you go to some of those cadet programs in India, you're still going to train in the US, at least some of them, I believe, right? We'll still bring you to like Arizona to train, or some other schools in the US to train. But if you want to reside, if that's your question, okay, to actually fly professionally in the US, there are some pros to that, and there's some cons to that as well, I'll be honest, right? Because I fly in the US and I know how things are here, and I know from experience of other people who fly in different parts of the world, Africa, Asia, we talk about experiences and things that happens and in those regions, right? And we can compare and say, flying here is easier or better, or flying here is more complex, and we can go back and forth on that. But one thing I would say is that it comes down to what you want long term. If your goal is to be a professional pilot, right, then whether you're in the US or India, it doesn't matter, right? Because you fly professionally at the end of the day. Now, going with a cadet program in India, for example, based on what you shared, it just gives you some form of a guaranteed job offer at the end of your training. Now, in the US as well, there's so many job opportunities. This right now, well, not like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but pilots are still needed in the US as well. So the option is there for you to pick. It's really down to what you want for yourself. What do you want for yourself long term? If your goal is to fly, then you can't go wrong with either of them, right? But if your goal is to, I don't know, fly for a particular airline because you just love the airline. Oh, I want to fly for Delta, or I want to fly for, I don't know, United, or whichever airline you like, then it makes the decision easier for you. I hope that makes sense. All right. Let's see. Hi, Steven. I reached the final stage of Superior Fellow Academy last year, but fell short at an earlier stage this year. What advice would you give to help hold confidence and motivation? Hey, Santos. Hey, you're not the only one. What stage did you come short this year? All right. What stage? I'm curious. But you're not the only person that has gone through this experience, or that is having this experience of having gotten to the final stage last year, and now for some reason you couldn't just repeat it. Okay. And the reasons are things that I cannot answer for you, because to be honest with you, as you know, most of the assessments were almost the same. All right. There were a few changes in how they structured the stages and all that stuff, but in terms of the assessments themselves, they're almost the same as what you did last year. So what happened this time around? This year was the Aeon. All right, so we're getting somewhere with the Aeon test. What part of the Aeon test did you struggle? Okay, because when it gets to this type of assessments, I go back to the practice aspect. I go back to, did you get to practice well in advance before you took the assessment? That's the only thing I can go if it's the Aeon test, right? Then those are the things I can go back to say could be potential problems, in the sense maybe you need more practice, maybe you need more time kind of digesting information in order to haste the actual one, right? But going forward, here's something I would say, right? Do not be discouraged by the fact that you didn't get through to even later stages for this year, because your ability to repeat and do to go through this process again comes down to how motivated you are. Your motivation is so important, and the reason why it is so important, and if you notice, right, in all these cadet programs, one of the things that they always mention is motivation. You have to motivate it, because nobody's going to push you, nobody's going to force you, nobody's going to tell you it's time to study or practice and all this stuff. So you need a high level of motivation in order to be able to succeed. And that means that you have to handle your setbacks and understand that, well, it was a setback, but you won't let it discourage you, and you will move forward with a very focused or heightened level of motivation. Okay, so that means start practicing sooner, right? Figure out where you came short in those Aeon assessments, right? Because I know there are a series of them. Which ones did you struggle with? What can you do to improve? And like I shared with somebody earlier, pass is still what I would still share with I would still share right here. Why? Because it's a lot of people have used it and they found it very useful, very somewhat accurate. Okay, and it's helped them to succeed, at least to the levels of getting selected, which I believe is all we want. But do not be discouraged, stay focused, start practicing sooner, figure out where you came short, where you were weak at, work on it. And one of the other things I always say is, just because you came short on the Aeon assessment doesn't mean that you shouldn't be familiar with the later stages, because guess what, next year is going to come around and then you would find yourself going through all those stages again, or getting to later stages, or going further in the application, and you now want to start looking for information, right? But if you gathered all that information now, it would help you at least speed up the process of preparing. Hey brothers, awesome video, highly informative as usual. So for your listeners, United Aviate Academy is accepting in a few weeks. Awesome, Logan, thanks for sharing that. It's interesting, the United Aviate, let me see. All right, here. Now, of course, for this one, you also have to have the right to live and work in the United States. Let me see. US citizen or legal permanent residents. We do not sponsor foreign visas. Okay. We have the assessments, virtual behavioral interview, conditional acceptance. Process details. Let me see. Submit your application. Application window opening. Proof of residency. Hold FE, first class medical. Assessment. Virtual behavior interview, provide proof of funding. And this is something else to keep in mind for those of you who are thinking of applying. All right. This is not a fully sponsored program or partially sponsored program. You gotta show proof of funding. And financial service system will review all submissions for approval, background check, enrollment agreement. And then you have the breakdown here. PPL 22.7, instrument 17, commercial 22.25, 5. Gosh, flight training is expensive, I'll be honest. 89,000. And this is something that, you know, you have to understand that you do everything well, right? You ace all your check rides, you don't repeat anything. Yeah, I see an optional certificate MEI 9250, check rides 97. Great. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. Go back here. You're welcome, Sanders. Thanks for joining the live. Don't forget to drop a like on this, by the way, if you're watching. Okay, know that I'm trying to, the more I can engage with you guys, the more I feel like we can share information like this. Okay, because one thing that you need to understand is there's no way I can know all of these things. I do not know everything. I can't monitor everything. There are some things I'm able to catch on a regular basis because I'm just more in tune with the organization. But in general, it's hard to, for example, I didn't know that United Aviate would open in a few days. Is it few days? I think it says few days, right? And the other thing is I didn't know that Wizz Air was even open, right? And Wizz Air is for people in the EU region. I didn't know it was open. So it is open actually, right? So that's why sometimes I do this, because if you join this live, you know, you're probably going to find more information from one another and be able to take on this approach of, okay, you know what, this is open, let me apply to it. And you just never know. You just never know. A lot of people send me messages every now and then telling me, oh, they found the video on my channel, they applied, they've gotten the interview, or they found something useful, they've now gotten accepted, and all these messages come in randomly. And it's not because I did anything special other than just the fact that I brought the awareness to people, right, through a medium like this, right? Social media, sharing, chatting, talking like this, all right? Let's see. Can you tell the cadet program, of course? Okay. Can you tell me a cadet program, cadet pilot programs across the world open to all nationalities? So one of the programs that I know is that is open to all nationalities hasn't been open in a while now, for application, and that is I think it was somewhere in the Middle East. Is it Emirates? Was it Emirates? Yeah, Emirate Cadet program. Let's see. So at some point, they had the Emirates Cadet program that was open to all nationalities, but then they changed that recently. See, nationalities enrolled 20. No. This is the school. Well, actually, this is the school. This is a flight training academy, not the program. Okay. But at some point in time, this is the school they use, just to make that clear. This is the school in which you train. But at some point, the Emirates Cadet program was open to this is still the flight, was open to all nationalities, right? And let me see if I can find that information again right here. Let's see, it's easy to okay, it says, are you a UAE national? If you're UAE national, check the entry requirements to our scholarship program. So if I go here, all right, this is the entry requirements. Apply to the UAE scholarship program. We're looking, okay, so let me go here. But this one requires that you are a resident of UAE. Let me see something. Can't find it now. Why is it this? Why does it look like this? It's not even loading. Don't know why it's doing that. Yeah, I don't know why it's not coming up. Looks funny to me. It's not loading right. But anyway, this was one of the programs that was open to all nationalities at some point, but they haven't done that in a while now. So I honestly don't know of any program that is open to all nationalities at this time. Did you ever fly to Serbia? Nope, I didn't. Let's see, what can I do to apply to Singapore Cadet program? Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, it's very rigorous and highly competitive, but for your viewers in the US, could be doable. Absolutely. Logan, thanks for sharing that. These programs are, especially the good, you know, very, even I've heard about the United Aviate program having some, like, a lot of people don't get through, you know, they start training and for some reason they struggle and they get kicked out of the training. I've heard that, you know, depending on the flight school they're at. And I actually saw an article recently about a lawsuit about the program, and they were suing United and the flight school. I'm sure you probably are familiar with that. The thing is that there's no you have to understand that a cadet program requires that you are really on top of things, all right? Because the airline wants the best of the best, if that makes sense, right? So if for any reason you're struggling and the student is not performing and it's just a lot of repeat rides and all that, that is not a good sign. The airline will not take on those kind of people and they get dropped off from the training. And that's why it can be really tough. It can be quite tough if you're not up to speed on things or catching on to things quickly. What can I do to apply it for Singapore Cadet program? What can you do? Well, I was looking at that earlier also. Let me see if I pull that up here. As long as you've met the requirements, you apply, and then let me say Singapore. Okay, right there. And like I said, I believe you have to be Singaporean. Actually, I highlighted it earlier. But from what I know, right, the process can be a little challenging as well to get selected. And when I say a little challenging, I'm talking about your experience, your qualifications. The more qualifications you have, whether you have a bachelor's degree, the better you would be. If you have aviation experience, the better you would be. And of course, when you go in for your interview, you have to be able to really show that you are interested in flying for the airline. You have to show those transferable skills, and I think I talk about those on a regular basis. So practicing, knowing what to say, how to say it, goes a long way, especially during the interview process. But otherwise, the rest is just making sure you do well on your assessments, right? Making sure you do well on the assessments, and acing them will go a long way. That is correct. Let's see. Well, actually, I think I'm skipping something here. What can you do to apply Singapore Cadet program? Can you help me out, please? Yeah. So to make sure I answered your question, right? Make sure you're practicing, right? And of course, apply. Sorry, I just got a message here. All right. And practice and practice and practice. You can't, for these cadet programs, you have to be on top of things, and especially when it comes to those assessments that you'd have to do. I'm currently in a run for the Jet 2 program, but they are very behind schedule with candidates at multiple stages of the process. Final stage is supposed to start next week. Well, so what are you waiting for? I know some of them are doing the motivation interview at this stage. I believe that's what they're waiting for. But if you're trying to if you're waiting on that as well, I wish you success. But I'm not very familiar with the program, I'll be honest, because I feel like, now understand that at the end of the day, they're all looking for similar things. Somebody who is professional, somebody who's highly motivated, somebody who can do the job, somebody who has the right head on their shoulders, right? That, like they say, and that means that you're competent in the things that you'll be required to do, whether it's going through training and all, right? But one thing I would say is that for any motivation interview, be very familiar with the airline, right? Know about the airline, know about their business model, know about, and of course, why you want to work for that airline, right? Why you think you want to be a pilot. Those kind of questions will go a long way. It's brutal, but like I said before, beg, borrow, steal to get through to the airlines. Yeah, beg, borrow, steal. Make sure you don't steal. All right, Saha, is Singapore Cadet program good? It is good from what I've heard. It's a good airline. They have, from what I've heard, I've never heard, I think, yeah, from what I've heard, I've never heard anything bad about the program. So I would say it's good. Did you ever fly to Serbia? No, I didn't. Is AI coming for us? That is a question that I feel like everybody wants to know, especially for those who are trying to become pilots. You always say, is AI coming for the job and all that? And the reality is at some point, automation will take over a lot of things, and it's already doing that. We know that already. But I believe the first phase would be eliminating one pilot. However, let me actually share this with you. Let's see if I can find the article now. Okay, right here, not Airbus. So I thought, did I say Airbus? EASA. So to give you guys a background, right? There was this push for single pilot operations, okay, and the name was extended minimum crew operations, and the idea is that one pilot can be at the controls with I believe a backup what do you call it, person on the ground, right, supporting the, actually you can just read it, it's right here. Let me see. Right here, where single pilot operations are allowed during cruise phase of flight. Okay, nonetheless, achieving a level of safety equivalent to these two pilot operations. This should offer at least an equivalent overall level of safety through compensation means, blah blah blah. And then we have the single pilot operations, where at a later stage, end-to-end single pilot operations might be allowed. Right. So that's the two concepts, okay, that they were pursuing, and this was all under the EASA supervision. Okay, but this was as of June 2025 they came out with this one. All right, EASA suspends research on single pilot operations, and the reason was this decision affects okay, let's see. Let me see. EASA findings reveal that current cockpit technology does not meet safety standards. Duh. Well, like, did they really have to get into researching that to figure out that, hey, the safety standards associated with two pilot operation necessitating further advancements in areas such as workload management, pilot health monitoring, and automated safety functions? Like, till today, we still have situations in which a pilot passes out, or a pilot is incapacitated, or we have a situation where pilot dies, right? So, and the fact remains that if not for the help of the other person, whether a co-pilot or a captain, being in there with them, things would have been really bad, right? The research was part of EASA's European blah blah blah, which aims to explore the EMCO, right, where one pilot would oversee the cruise phase of flight. It just sounds like a very bad idea. Just really bad idea, in my opinion. Now, but the reality remains that things are going to get to that stage, unfortunately. Things are going to get to that stage, unfortunately, and it's just a matter of time. Okay, it's just a matter of time. Let's see. Okay, let me share this, right? For those of you who may not know this, right? Why is it that you don't want to have one pilot in the flight deck during the cruise phase of flight, or whether it's the SIPO or the single pilot operation? All right, that the goal is to start with the EMCO and eventually transition to SIPO, right, single pilot operation again. And the whole idea is that, hey, things happen, right? This is something here. If you want to read it, you can just read it, right? The crash was deliberately caused by the co-pilot who had previously been treated for suicidal tendencies and declared unfit to work by his doctor. Okay. Libet kept this information from his employer and instead reported for duty shortly after reaching cruise altitude, and while the captain was out of the cockpit, Libet locked the cockpit door and set the plane to fly downward in a controlled descent into a mountain. And the reality remains, yes, you would say that, this is one-off, but this happens here and there. How many times have people in general committed, I don't want to say the word because I don't know how YouTube would treat this and say, something, but people, I don't know how to say it. Some people say unalive. I think that's the lingo that is used online. But the point here is, people have things that they're dealing with, and eliminating and putting one person in charge just seems like a dangerous thing to do. But anyway, good thing is they've suspended it for now. But one thing I want to also say is that the reality remains that automation is taking over a lot of things, and the reason why, and it's a good thing. Okay, let's look at it this way. It's a good thing in the sense that when there's a highly sophisticated system on board, it helps pilots to an extent. Okay, everything that is introduced does have its pros and cons, especially when it's new. When it's done and implemented well over time, right, it does help. Think about the autopilot system, right? When it was first introduced, it was complicated, it was janky, it didn't work well, it wasn't smooth. But over time, this autopilot system has become so sophisticated that it will land the plane, it will take, it does a lot of things almost better than the pilot. Does that mean that you should be fearful of losing your job to an automation system? Well, something to keep in mind, but it doesn't mean that you should be fearful, right? I kind of went on a tangent there. Let's see. So yeah, I don't know. AI is coming for us. It has its pros and cons. Let's put it that way. Any tips on how to boost my chances for KLM's program? KLM, and actually I don't know about KLM program. I'll be honest about that. All right, KLM Cadet program. One of the things I know. This is the Flight Academy, actually. Let me see. Working the flight deck, but jobs. What am I doing? Working the cockpit, pilots. Okay, so this is what I want to see, right? Even though this is not for cadets, it's going to be similar. So you have your CV selection, online assessment, psychological assessment, simulator grading. I don't know if that will be the same for cadets, but I actually wanted to see what the assessment, what the selection process was like. Starting salary, £33, 300 euros to 5,500 euros. Let me see if I can find something here. Just trying to see if I can find something on online about the selection process. Kind of it's similar to the typical online assessments that you take from most of these airlines. Role play exercise, mental math, reasoning, online assessment, simulator assessment, online assessment. Yeah, it's pretty similar to what is out there that most airlines use. Let's see, any tips to boost my chances for KLM's program? So I'm actually looking for the selection process, by the way, just so you know. Any tips on that? I don't know I can't even find the application page, you know, if that makes sense, because knowing the requirements and knowing what the selection process is can help to maybe share more information or more insight on what to expect. But I can't even find it right now, and I feel like I'm taking too much trying to. Let me say KLM. Yeah, I can't find it unfortunately, but unless this, let me say 2025 requirement. Nothing. I'm not finding anything here. All right. Trying to close that out. Close that out. This is something that, you know, once in a while I try to catch up on what's new, and this is from aircurrent.com. The ongoing investigation. This is from the Air India crash, by the way, for those of you who may be following that. The cause of the June 12 crash has narrowed its focus to the movement of the engine fuel control switches following an analysis of Boeing 787 integrated flight and voice data recorders. Multiple people with knowledge of the investigation tell the Air Current the crash under civil. Okay, ICAO states in charge. Okay, just. It says at this point in the inquiry. Why is it not highlighting? All right, anyway, it says at this point in the inquiry, the data available to the investigators does not indicate a mechanical or design issue with the 787 or its 2GE Aerospace GenX 1B engines, TAC is told. The knowledgeable people who spoke with TAC also indicate that the post-accident analysis showed no sign of fuel contamination or improper retraction of the aircraft's flaps, two factors often speculated as possible contributors to the accident. The familiar people said the lack of any kind of advisory warning from Boeing or GE operators, known as the multi-operator message or all ops wire, in the 13 days that followed the initial black box reading, is a key signal that a mechanical failure is not immediately suspected as the likely cause of the crash. Kind of crazy. I don't know. Guess we'll see. And the fuel levers are here. I see. Yeah, that's interesting. Cadet programs versus traditional flying schools versus aviation university. Well, three different things. One thing is, if you have the ability to go to through a cadet program, I would say that it comes with the ability to get hired with the airline. If that makes sense, right? So if you go through a cadet route, you don't. It's almost like you have a job at the end of it. Okay. Traditional flying schools, yeah, if you have money and you can sponsor yourself, yeah, that means that you don't have to get through any selection process, and there's nothing wrong with that, just so you know. but there's no guarantee, if that makes sense, at the beginning of this whole process that you get a job at the end of it. In comparison to like a Cadet program, like I said, a Cadet program, if you do well, you are guaranteed to get hired. That's the thing. Now with Aviation University, it comes with a degree, right? So if you have the ability, if your goal is to get a degree during training or have a degree, then that's where your aviation university can come in handy. Okay, so there are 3 different parts with slightly different outcomes, if that makes sense. The Cadet program has a job with it even from the onset of your training. Traditional flying schools, it's like, yeah, you know, you're going to flight school, but you're not sure if there's going to be a job at the end of it, or if you're going to get a job right away. You might have to wait for some time to find a job. All of those factors should be considered. And of course, an aviation university means that you have a degree. So Bruce, please let me know how many times does Singapore Airlines open its application. So I think that's, from what I know, a Singapore Airlines application, Cathay Pacific is the one that stays open all through the year. I don't know how often this opens. I know it opens at least once a year. Okay, for Singapore Airlines, I know it opens at least once a year. But when does it open? How long does it stay open for? I don't know, because it doesn't say on it actually. It doesn't say when it closes. Yeah, you're gonna have to create a username and all that. Oh yeah, this is 7 years. Somebody was asking how long you have to stay with an airline. 7 years from the date of appointment as first officer. Yikes, that's a long time. But yeah, that's what I've seen all around. Yeah, so I don't know when it closes. I don't know how often it opens, but like I said, I know that at least it opens once a year for applications, and at some point they close it. I don't know when, but you know. How much duration in a year? So here's the thing. The duration depends on the level of application they get, qualified applications that they get. The way it works is, at least from what I've seen, like last year or 2 years ago, the same thing happened where they would open it. They don't say when they will close it. But from my understanding, if they generally have a goal of the number of people they want to take, right? And let's assume, I'm going to throw random numbers out there. Let's assume they want to take 50 people, right? They always shoot to have at least maybe 250 qualified applicants. Maybe 200, you know, maybe 4 times 4 of that number anyway, or times 5 of that number, all right? Qualified applicants to go through this process. Why? Because not all those people, qualified applicants, when I say qualified, I'm talking about people who actually meet the requirements. And of course, going through the selection process, some people will not get through, so they end up getting cut down up until they get to the final number. So anyway, to answer your question, once they have enough qualified applicants, they generally stop. They close the application, close the site for application, if that makes sense, or at least shut it down for that year. And I think that's the way it's worked, because they've never really announced when it's open or when it's closed, or at least when it closes. I've never seen that date anywhere. I've been on for almost 2 hours. Of course, if you haven't subscribed or liked the video, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. I'm gonna be wrapping it up in about 10 minutes, just catching up on stuff that is going on in aviation right now, news, articles, stuff, answering your questions as well. What is interesting about this though is if they are now focusing on the old fuel selector or fuel cutoff or fuel control switches as as something to look into deeply, that doesn't really answer the whole makes no sense to me anyway. It's just so absurd that right after takeoff somehow those could have kicked off. I don't know, kind of interesting. Let me close this one as well. Let's see, it says the preliminary investigation report into to release July 11 in line with international aviation standards. Hey Sasha or Saha, sorry. I think you might want to try a different email or make sure you have the right password, because there's nothing I can really do from here, or there's you just have to make sure that you have the right email or password, if that makes sense. All right, I am going to call it a day. It's been great. Thanks for joining this session, of course, or this live. I just thought I should check in with you all. It's been awesome. It's been great. I really appreciate all the questions. One thing I would say is, as always do your due diligence, do your research, find information, and of course practice for whatever interview or assessment you have coming up. At the end of the day, these airlines needs to hire people, right? And they need to hire qualified people. So that means that getting yourself qualified, getting yourself ready and prepared will guarantee that you get selected, if that makes sense, or at least put you at the top of the list. So keep doing what you're doing, keep staying motivated, keep practicing. Like I always say, it's all about the more you practice, the better your chances of succeeding, whether it's in an interview, whether it's in assessment, in anything you do. All right. I'll see you guys in a future live, on a future live stream, on a future video. If you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe. And have a great evening wherever you are, or have a good night, or have a great day wherever you are. Okay. What else was I gonna share? Of course, if you have any questions, you can always leave it in the comment section. I will try to respond. Again, the goal of this is to try to respond to this while I'm live, but hey, once I'm off, if you have any questions, leave in the comment section. I will definitely get to them soon. Have a great day and